Welcome to the Anti-Social Podcast, episode 8. This episode is a little bit overdue. I was kind of hoping that I could put this out a little bit sooner, but, well, I guess it's probably a good thing. I had just a couple of other opportunities to get a couple of other episodes out beforehand, so not the best of timing, but I still wanted to get this particular episode out one way or the other because it's a cool little story and adds a bit of context as to what's currently happening at the moment with the whole world of my band Lord, and where we're going sort of moving forward as well. But first things first, this episode is not brought to you by my VHS copy of Dino Riders Volume 3, entitled Toro Toro Torosaurus. I'll put a photo up on the Facebook page. I've actually made a photo gallery where I'm going to take a photo of each of these items and put them up there, and everyone can leave a comment if you feel so, or you know what the item is and you can relate to it, or you got something similar that you can show. As I said a couple of episodes ago, most of these things are well and truly out of date, not available anymore, and pretty much useless. Dino Riders is one of those cartoons and toys that was much loved when I was a kid. I actually remember, I think it might have been my 6th birthday, my parents bought me, it was the Brontosaurus toy that had, all the armor on it and the little figurines and whatnot. And I had a couple of other toys. I think I had like a pterodactyl and maybe some kind of stegosaurus type dinosaur or whatever. But for those people who don't know what the hell Dino Riders is, basically, from what I can remember, it's sort of like this human and dinosaur concept where they're living together and they're battling an enemy of these alien creatures, but they all use dinosaurs to pretty much attack each other. And so the dinosaurs are all equipped with armor and machine guns, and they look like more lasers than the machine guns. So it's sort of like bringing the ancient past into the future. I cannot remember any of the storylines from any of these shows. I think for, at least in Australia, and maybe there's a few other people who could tell me otherwise, but it seemed to be that the toys were more popular than the show. Maybe that's just where I was living. Dino Riders wasn't really on TV that much, but the toys were everywhere and extremely popular. And I don't think they were terribly cheap either. I think they were quite pricey for what they were at the time. I just remember being extremely surprised that my parents had got me this particular toy because it was quite big, and it would have cost a lot of money, or at least, from a 6-year-old's point of view, maybe it cost bugger all. But at the time I was blown away. I did not expect anything of this sort. So I might try and find a picture of this particular toy online as well, and I'll chuck it in the comments of this particular video. But I bought this video, even know where, I may have bought it from like a thrift shop or like an op shop, trying to relive my my past as I went through a phase a few years ago where I started going back and finding all the things that I loved when I was a kid and trying to grab them again. I went through this phase of buying boxes of basketball cards, there's certain toys. I went through this massive Lego phase. I've got so much Lego, it's crazy, but I'll leave that for another episode because that's a frustrating thing in itself. I found a bunch of these Dino Riders videos, and I never seen them before. I was just blown away. I'm like, I've got to get these, and they were probably like $1 each or whatever, and bought them purely to play them when I got home. And I had a really crappy VHS player at home, and so I went to go and play them, and then I realized that they don't work. More so, my VHS player just stopped working, and really that just meant that I've never actually watched these videos. So they're sat on my shelf collecting dust, and every time I see them I just get frustrated because it was just a useless purchase. It gave me a bit of a spark of excitement when I bought them and found them, but I've never watched them. And to be honest, it's probably like most things. When you're a kid, everything's exciting, but when you go back as an adult, and even feel a bit weird calling myself an adult, but when I go back and try and relive any of these things, 9 times out of 10 they're nowhere near as good as what you remember them to be. You've always sort of blown them up to be bigger and better than what they are as the years go by. So I'm sure if I actually put this video in and went to watch it, it'd probably be extremely shit. So maybe there's a silver lining to that VHS player not working, that I wasn't going to subject myself to absolute rubbish 80s cartoons. But mind you, there's some amazing 80s stuff that, all the Transformers ones were pretty cool, and Robotech and a bunch of other stuff like that. Similar sort of, the way that the cartoons were put together, or sort of the way that they're designed or drawn or whatever. They're just especially a lot better than what cartoons are these days from what I've seen. Not that I sit down and watch a lot of cartoons, but, you know what I mean, hopefully. So yes, this episode is not brought to you by my Dino Riders Volume 3 Toro Toro Torosaurus, ages 4 to 14, so I shouldn't even have this in my possession, and I'll chuck a photo up on the Facebook page for you to check out. So, Going back to what I was saying before, this episode is about my trip to the US that happened a couple of weeks ago. In a nutshell, and I put a blog up on our band page just to give a bit of insight as to what I was about to do and what the purpose was behind this trip. And I did it with the envision that I would be updating people as I go over the week and a half that I was there, or probably just a week, I think. But, I think like anything, the jet lag, meeting up with people, copious amounts of alcohol, you tend to get a little bit sidetracked. So every best intention was there to sort of do this live update and keep people engaged and see what I'm up to, but it just never eventuated. But nevertheless, I was able to have a pretty cool trip. Definitely a successful one, which I'll get to a little bit further down the track. But I'll try not to go down this with a whole blow-by-blow description because I don't think a lot of it's terribly interesting. But I'll just try and, I guess, give just a few thoughts along the way and some interesting things that I saw and take it from there. And I think it's just a cool little thing of how it's linked up to what's happening now at the band. But the main reason for doing this trip was because of the ProgPower USA festival that happens every year in Atlanta. And it's a festival that we've definitely been aware of for quite a number of years. And it's something that we've always sort of looked at as a possibility or as an opportunity one day down the track that we could potentially play this festival. And we've always struggled to get into the US just to try and find opportunities. And the entertainment visa path that you have to go down, and it's a financial commitment that you have to make with an element of risk. And I think unless you've got really good reasons to be there, or you can absolutely commit yourself, with a good booking agent, or you're signed to a label or something like that, then it's a difficult one to try and master that particular market. But we've seen a lot of peers do it. A lot of friends of ours have tried different ways of getting over there and playing. Some legitimate, some not so much. But there has been a fair bit of success from a lot of peers from our circles that have made that trip over there and made that commitment. But for us, we've just due to, I guess, the way that we function and the fact that we've been to a number of other countries and definitely made the most of what tools we've had on hand, the US has just always been that one that we will get to eventually, and we sort of put it on the back burner because it's just a little bit too out of our grasp as far as commitment goes from a financial point of view and whatnot, because we're a DIY band. We do everything ourselves. We have very little to no label support anymore. Actually, we've got none. We're off our Japanese label now. That's probably for another episode because that's an interesting challenge that we've got ahead with our Japanese market. But yeah, apart from Japan, we're completely independent, and we've tried to get signed to different labels here and there, but you're sort of on a fence with it because if you do happen to find a label and an appropriate one that can actually help you, then that's fantastic because it gives you a lot of opportunities for contacts, gives you more distribution of your product and more exposure to more people's, which is great. The downside to it, especially now in the current climate, is that you lose control of your music. You're the ownership changes. You can definitely negotiate these sort of things, but given that the industry is nowhere near what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, there's less flexibility about what you can take ownership of when you're negotiating with a label. The label is definitely looking for as many different ways to recoup and remain a financially viable business. So it is hard, and there's a lot of things with retaining digital rights and being able to freely use our songs in whatever way we choose. So a lot of that stuff sort of goes out the window depending on the label and what sort of deal you can negotiate. So for us, unfortunately, we're sort of a needle in the haystack, especially in Europe. It's a lot harder. US is a little bit different. I think just in general, it's hard because, at least from our perception, the style of music that we play, there's not a massive market for it, and it's similar to Australia. It's labels might pick you up and give you a little bit of distribution, but it's very much underground. It's a very similar concept to what we've got here in Australia. But Europe's a lot different. It's a lot more financially viable to be able to run it at a larger scale. But at the same time, every band in the world is trying to get exposure in Europe. So you suddenly are competing with a number of other bands, and a number of bands that are already in Europe, which is a hard thing because, and I've said this to a few people in the past, you've got two bands. You've got us and, say, a band from Germany, and from a record label point of view, they could look at the two bands and go, okay, well, we've got this band from Australia who, from our point of view, sound really good. They've got a great sound, etc., and we could probably do quite a bit with them. Then we've got this band from Germany who are still good. They're also good. Maybe a little bit more limited with their music or whatever it might be, but they're in Germany, and we can tour them a lot more. We can give them more exposure because there's less risk with having to try and finance this band. And most record labels aren't going to pay for you to fly over to Europe. Actually, 99.9% of them probably won't. But, signing a band from Australia, you have to sort of hope from a record label's point of view that that band can commit to a high level of touring and not just come over for a couple of weeks a year. They need a touring band. And we've got a lot of friends that have definitely mastered this and go off and tour for 8 to 10 months out of the year, and that's great. But for a lot of other bands, it's a massive commitment and a massive time commitment, but also financial commitment. So from a record label point of view, they're more concerned about that and recouping as much money as possible, and touring is a massive revenue earner. So going back to that option of those two bands, it will probably make more sense to sign the band who's local in Germany, who may not be as good, but they know that they can get a lot more out of that band. They can get a lot more work out of that band and tour them a lot harder and get them onto bills and onto festivals and whatnot, and sell a respectable amount of merchandise and CDs and whatever it might be to help recoup the business. So it's a very difficult thing to try and get signed these days. And for us, we're at a turning point where we do better from a financial point of view than we ever have before. And while our audience is limited because we're only as good as the amount of work that we put in from a do-it-yourself point of view, we're still in a better position than some of these label deals. And we've seen some friends of ours get signed to labels overseas, and they lose the rights to their music. They find out that they're not getting as much support as they originally promised, and they're left in a pretty difficult and frustrating position where they can't really do a great deal. They're stuck on the other side of the world. They can't go down a legal path because it costs them too much money, or they just don't know how the legal system works, and it just causes a lot of headaches. So for us, we've always tried now, and it seems more and more reasonable to go down this path now than ever before, where we're not as concerned about being signed to a label. And it does mean that we have to do a lot more work, but we tend to get a lot more back out of it. And even if we stay at a reasonably small scale on an underground sort of scale, cult status or whatever, then that's still great because we're still achieving far more than a lot of other bands have been able to achieve. So we're extremely grateful for that. And anything that comes of that is a bonus. So going back to the US, we wanted to get on this festival, and we contacted Glenn, who's the main organizer of the festival and has been organizer of the festival from day dot. And he's sort of been linked with us a little bit through the Ultimate Metal forums, which we've got our own band forum on there. And it was last year, I believe, where somebody had tagged me in a post or sent me an email or a message and said that Glenn had actually played our last album, Digital Lies, over the PA between bands. And we knew Glenn liked the band. We'd heard a couple of nice comments from his end over the years, and there seemed to be some respect for what we do, which was fantastic and definitely made us feel good. But this was sort of an indication where we sort of had to do something. We had to make a move of some sort, and I contacted Glenn and we had a chat, and Glenn was very much open to the opportunity. But we're a band from Australia, and we don't have a great deal of presence in the US, and Glenn basically said always open to the possibility, but the timing has to be right. There has to be, from our point of view, from the band's point of view, we need to look at what sort of releases we have coming up. Can we coincide something together from a promotional point of view? He has to be, from Glenn's point of view, it has to be the right timing as far as what bands he's already committing to over the next few years, as far as where he sees the festival going. So there's a lot of elements that have to fall into place, but there was an openness there to at least continue to talk later on down the track. No commitments, no guarantees, anything of the sort, but it was a good indication that if, from our point of view as a band, if we were able to align things a bit better from our side and in a way just align ourselves and put ourselves in the right position, then our chances of this being a reality would increase tenfold. We've got friends of ours in Voyager who played their second ProgPower this year, and we've seen some other bands over the years, peers of ours from other countries that have had some success and have played the festival. We knew that the place had a great reputation, very family orientated, people that just go every year no matter who's playing, and a crowd that completely caters for our style of music. Very much, as the title of the festival is called, ProgPower, progressive metal, power metal, and all the immediate related genres that sort of fall within that spectrum. So we knew that the demographic, if our crowd was going to be anywhere in the US, they would definitely be at this festival. So for us, we need to work out what we could do to try and make this thing happen. what we did is we just started looking at and planning over the next sort of 12 to 18 months where we wanted to be. We had to think about the plans that we had for this year, being 2015, and then what we wanted to do in 2016. Loosely, it's a bit hard to sometimes commit to long-term things, but we wanted to have a bit of a rough idea of what we wanted, where we wanted to be. And our lives personally are all changing as well. I'm getting married next year, and Tim's had a kid, and we're all sort of slowly getting domesticated and having to be more aware of a balanced lifestyle and not just throwing everything into the band and that's it. So we have to try and plan ahead as best as we can. But we worked it out and we thought, this is a possibility. And from our point of view, if we're going to try and get over to the US one way or the other, then 2016 has to be the year. And whether it be ProgPower, whether it be just a small club tour or just doing some promotional shows, whatever it may be, we need to make that step. So we started planning ahead and trying to work out how to do it. So what I decided one morning, just sitting at home, that maybe I should just go over. And just go over this year for the 2015 festival, just go as a fan, see some bands, meet up with some people. Voyager was playing, so it was great. I knew some people that were going to be there, and even better, they were playing it. And just let the guys know, let the organisers know that I was heading over, and just whatever happened. And it was more of a case that, I think from our point of view, as far as we'd limited our promotional endeavours in the US market, has all been online. We've sent a few promo copies over to certain people and whatever, but it's very much been from a distance. And I thought that regardless of whatever the outcome of this would be, I think just as a grassroots old school approach to be able to go over there, go to a hub where I know these type of fans are, and I can just chat to people, have a beer with somebody, give them a flyer or a CD or something like that, and be able to walk away from the week that I'm away and just have a few more people know who we are. And you never know, like it might just be 100 people that I've met that are just purely just fans, but there might be a couple of people who have some connections. Who knows? But it's a very old school way of approaching it. But I thought having it on a personable level and just being able to connect with some people in a market that we've been trying to tap into would have a great impact. So I pitched it to the band. I just said, look, what's everyone's thoughts about covering half of my costs to get over there, and I'll cover the other half because, I'm going to go over there and have a good time. So, I've got some self-interest there, but, obviously going over there with the intention of spreading the word of the Lord. And, we were in an okay position where we could afford to put that money aside, and the guys were happy with the ideas. So that was it. It was in the bag, and I had to sort of work out how I was going to do it, sort of the dates and the time and whatever. So over the coming months, we'd locked in my flights and worked out that I was going to go to LA for a couple of days, go to New York for roughly 2 days, and then head to Atlanta for the remainder. And it was a very quick trip overall, but I knew that I had sort of a limited amount of time that I could be away, but it was good just to be able to go to a couple of other places before getting to Atlanta, especially just given where we're coming from in Sydney. You usually have to stop in LA anyway, so I figured, well, I may as well seize that opportunity and stay there for a couple of days and then move over. And New York just seemed to be, I've never been there before, so I thought it was a good excuse just to stop in there very quickly and then head to Atlanta afterwards. So then over the coming months, what I decided to do was work out ways of just planting the seeds and just trying to hook up different things along the way and just let people know that I was coming over. Started connecting with people in certain Facebook groups, made friends with, the whole ProgPower crew, from crew to organisers, with no intention or no pressure put on or anything like that, but, wanted to be able to connect with these people and have a chat and just say, look, I'm going to come over. I'd love to have a beer, love to have a chat. And, when we released our EP back in June, I sent everyone over just a little care package, t-shirt, CD, a couple of CDs here and there. And, I knew some of them were fans, which was a massive plus for us, definitely helped. I think if we went in completely cold with the guys not knowing who we are, then it'd be a lot more of an uphill battle. So we definitely had an advantage at this point. So I definitely made the most of that and milked that awareness of the band by making sure that people had our product and had some merchandise and made sure that I did it in a way that just didn't show any ulterior motive as such, or nothing that just seemed rude or inappropriate anyway. I think it was a given that everyone knew what we wanted and that we wanted to be a part of this festival, but we did it in a way that was respectful. and we stayed out of people's hair. We just touched base when we needed to, kept it as brief as possible, and just ensured that people had bits and pieces of what we were doing, and went from there. And I connected with a lot of other people, a lot of metal fans that were in the US, a lot of sort of power metal, melodic metal groups that were on Facebook and on forums and whatnot, and just started chatting to a lot of people just to get a bit of familiarity of the band and who I was. And then leading into the whole, hey, I'm going to be in the US, be great to have a drink, blah blah, and that definitely helped big time, especially meeting up with people in each of the cities. I already had a link there. I had an open door, or an invitation, so to speak, to meet up with people and chat with people due to a bit of legwork leading up to it, the months leading up to the trip. We also, from a ProgPower point of view, just made sure we were on the compilation CD, put an ad in the ProgPower Festival book, and not that we were trying to do it, well, we were trying to increase our chances, but it was just a great opportunity for us. We could see it was a great opportunity to be able to expose our band to the key demographic of metal fans who were there, and we knew that our chances of picking up fans were much higher than us trying to put our ad in an alternative magazine somewhere else. We just knew that our fan base attended this festival, so it just made sense anyway, regardless of any other intentions put in there. But we tried to tick as many boxes as we could, just to show that we wanted to be a part of this festival and not just take advantage of it. We wanted to be able to give something back and do whatever we can to embrace the whole concept, and not just come in and take advantage of it, and not to go off on a completely different tangent, because I no doubt we'll have this conversation with many people down the track. But I noticed from a lot of bands, and I've got to admit, I've done it over the years as well, where a lot of artists, musicians plead for help. They plead for something. They're always asking, and it's great to ask. I think you're not going to find out if you can get anything without asking, but there's a way in asking, and I think a lot of people forget about it because maybe we're in an age now where there's a sense of panic, where if you don't get the foot in the door now, then you miss out completely, and everything appears to move so much quicker than what it has in the past. And maybe it's just this digital age or whatnot, but at least I feel it sometimes. I certainly get swept up in it, and you panic, and you want to try and get things out of people as quickly as you can, and milk an opportunity and whatnot. But sometimes you need to take a breather, and you need to think of it from the other person's perspective. Think about whether it's an appropriate time or not. But more importantly, you need to be able to sell the request to them. You need to be able to show them that while you're asking for something, you want to be able to give them something back in return. And whether that be a record label or a booking agent or a promoter, or even just from a fan's perspective, if you want someone to listen to your music, you need to be able to sell it to them. You need to be able to show them why they should listen to your music. Why should they ignore every other request coming through on Facebook or any other form of social media, or at a show handing out a flyer? You need to be able to convince them why it's a good idea for them to listen to your music, and not bitch and moan and whinge online or in person why people just don't take any notice of what you do. It's a give and take relationship. That's just the way that we work as humans. And that's the way good relationships work. From a business or a personal point of view, it has to go both ways. And I've certainly failed at this miserably over the years gone by, but I've definitely embraced it a lot more now than I ever have before, where, if you want something from somebody, you need to be able to go to them and show them what you can do for them. And it might just be as simple as providing them with a quality product. It might be a case of showing them what you can do from a promotional point of view. It could be what you could do for them to help them progress. If it's somebody who's more on your level, it could be a cross-promotion point of view, where you want them to be able to do some promoting on your behalf, but vice versa, you can do something for them. From a fan point of view, or being at a show, sometimes it's just a case of just chatting to someone and not shoving something in somebody's face. I'll probably touch on that a little bit more into this episode, but you can't just... Sometimes it's good. I think if you're at a massive international show and you're moving quickly, it's fine to hand out flyers to people, and it's okay. But you can't bitch and moan when someone throws a flyer on the ground, or just completely ignores it, or doesn't even take it off you. You can't whinge about that, because from their point of view, they're getting bombarded, something shoved in their face, and from their point of view, why are they going to waste their time on that? Now, it still is a great way of working, and you can do that, but sometimes you might hand out half the amount of flyers because you stood there and had a chat to somebody, and a genuine chat. You're not just trying to engage in small talk to try and get your point across and just wait till they stop talking so you can throw your pitch out there. It's more of a case of just getting to know somebody, and it's that human experience, which I'm definitely discovering on this whole podcast thing I've started. It's just fantastic. But, sometimes I'll stand there and I'll have a chat to someone, and by the end of it, I forget to give them a flyer. But I've connected with them enough that they find me online later on, or I find them online later on, and you've built that connection, and there's no intention there or bad intention that you're only talking to them to try and push a product or push a certain thing, or trying to get them to buy a ticket to your show or buy a CD or whatever it might be. And it's more genuine. And especially on this trip, there's a lot of opportunities where I just completely forgot to give them something. But a lot of the time, a lot of those people found me on Facebook, days, weeks past after the festival happened. So it still worked out great. And for the ones that I did remember a flyer, it was more an afterthought at the end of the conversation. Say, oh, look, by the way, this is what I'm doing. This is the band, etc., etc. I'd love for you to check them out, check it all out, and hey, stay in contact. It'd be great to keep chatting. And it's just a more human experience, and it's just selling. You're convincing them that you're genuine and you love what you do, and there's a passion there, and people connect to that a lot better than you just asking all the time, asking for something, asking. And I think a lot of bands just forget about that and are too busy panicking about trying to get their foot in the door, trying to beat their peers to try and get somewhere before they do, and trying to get further up the rung and achieve more than somebody else. And we tend to forget that, we're all in this together, and we're all trying to help each other. And the more that we just take a breather and look to see what we can do for other people, then the more that we're going to get back later on down the track. And that's probably a big thing in life in general. The more that you do for others, the more you're going to get back. And you don't do it just for the sake of getting something equally back in return. It's just the more that you just help people and give them the things that they need, then the better your chances that you're going to be in a better position. People will want to come back and help you and when you need help, and you won't have to plead and throw the hard sales pitch to somebody to try and get them to jump on board to something that they've got no idea or have got no reasoning as to why they should fulfill your request. Anyway, back off that tangent. So going back to the trip itself. So date-wise, I'm not even going to go by date sort of thing. I'm going to brush over this a little bit more, and I really want to focus a bit more on the ProgPower stuff. But left Sydney, went to LA, got to LA, and I was staying in the Hollywood Hills. And I've been to LA, I think, roughly 17 or 18 years ago when I was a kid. Came over with the family, and great trip, but there's little bits and pieces I remember and a lot that I don't. So this is probably the official first time I've been to LA. I've got to experience it now as an adult and do it on my own. I went over by myself, which was kind of cool. It was just good that I could just do my own thing, and if I felt like doing something, I could. Or if I didn't, who cares? I didn't have to worry about anybody else and them being bored or irritated with the decision that I make. So it was a little bit liberating in that sense. But stayed in Hollywood Hills and actually used Airbnb. I'm not sure if anyone's ever used this before, but I was a little bit reluctant to use this particular website because I just didn't want to. I had the thought in my head that it was sort of like hostels where you sort of share with other people and with other backpackers, and just having to have small talk conversation or interact a lot more with people, share rooms and facilities. And I just wasn't interested in that whatsoever. But this Airbnb caters for that sort of traveler, but they also have a number of other different scenarios where people just rent out their homes or their studio apartments, their units or whatever it might be, and you can go from a completely shared scenario to a completely isolated private arrangement. So I found this apartment in Hollywood Hills. It's a studio apartment that this guy had available on Airbnb, and snapped it up. And I was still a little bit cautious. I didn't know how this whole thing worked. It wasn't your traditional hotel, and I've got to say, it was probably the best thing ever. I got there, the guy, I never even got to meet the guy. The guy just sent me a text message. I let him know when I was in the area. He sent me a message when it was available, gave me all the instructions of where I needed to go to unlock the safety deposit box thing to get the key out, gave me all the instructions of, where to get in, what key was for what, where to put the rubbish, all the just, the little bits and pieces of information that help. And he also had a lot of suggestions on things in the area to check out, and it was fantastic. So the really cool thing about this is that it was a really, really nice studio apartment, very small, very modest, just pretty much one room with a bathroom, And I was there for a couple of days, and it just felt like I was living there. It felt like I'd moved to Hollywood, and it was just a cool feeling to be a part of it. And you just felt the energy so much more than living or staying in a hotel, or whatever that might be. So it just felt a lot more. You felt a lot more connected to the area. It was just awesome. And for the first day that I got there, it was more of a case of just trying to stay awake. Jet lag was certainly something I was well and truly aware of by that point. And had a walk down Hollywood Boulevard, had a couple of drinks, went to a cafe, and just checked out the area, just did a bit of walking, and that night went out to a gig and saw a few bands play. Just checked out. I think there was more sort of a sludge doom sort of crowd, but had a chat to a few people there. There was definitely a crowd that normally, for me, it wasn't worth trying to promote the band or whatever. I had a chat to a couple of guys who were actually playing in the bands that night, but overall, it definitely wasn't the demographic of people that would be interested in my music. And I'm definitely stereotyping here, but I figured I'd save my resources for ProgPower in Atlanta. But it was cool. It was good to go to a live show first night in the States, and I was messaging some friends of mine back home, and someone had suggested this nightclub down on Hollywood, just off Hollywood Boulevard, and said, it was just a great 80s rock club, and there'd be a lot of rock fans, etc., etc. And I thought, cool, that could be a good opportunity to go there and check it out, and maybe just meet a few people and have a chat, have a couple of drinks and some good music. Unfortunately, my friend wasn't completely aware that it's not always an 80s rock club. So I got to this club, stood outside in the line, waited a bit, had a chat to a couple of randoms in the line, and then got in and sort of looked at the crowd and went, there's a lot of PVC here, and a lot of dyed black hair, and a lot of pale foundation makeup, and New Rock boots, and the music's a bit industrial. What's going on here? And sure enough, it was some like bondage, S&M, fetish, dominatrix sort of themed night or whatever at this club. I sort of walked through and I was messaging my friend saying, I don't think this is the right place. And he goes, no, it's all happening upstairs. So in the main room, you walk in, there's cages and these people like dancing in the cages, and everyone's drinking. It was okay. It didn't seem like out of control. It just wasn't my crowd at all. So anyway, I get this message while I'm in there, and paid like $9 American for a Corona or something like that. And I went, this is not a good sign. Anyway, he said, no, go upstairs, it's better. There's a bar up there and there's like 80s music and whatever. So I thought, okay, maybe it's just two sort of themed nights in the one venue. So I go upstairs, and no, it wasn't. It was what it was downstairs, but next level up. It was there was a lady getting spanked by some dude wearing all leather, and a whole crowd of PVC warriors all standing around watching this lady just getting spanked with this whip. And I sort of just walked up, had a look, and went, yeah, no, not for me. So I walked back down, went out to the courtyard where there was another stage with some burlesque woman wearing all PVC with her tits hanging out, tassels on, getting dancing around and whatever. And I sort of just quickly finished my Corona and got out of there and called it a night. But look, I got to experience a different side to LA that I wasn't planning on. So thanks to my mate Barry for luring me there. So yeah, then the next day was much better. There was a show on at the Rainbow. There was quite a few bands playing there. Jack Russell's Great White, Red Dragon Cartel, Leather Wolf was playing, and there's a few other bands. And it was like this freebie gig on that afternoon in the car park. And because I didn't realise it was Labor Day weekend, so there's a number of people I was going to meet up with in LA to do podcast interviews, or just meet up and just do a bit of networking and just say hi and have a drink or have a meal or whatever it might be. But a lot of them ended up at the last minute realising what weekend it was. And with Labor Day weekend, a lot of people in LA just get the hell out of town and go somewhere else for the holidays. And I think, from what someone told me, it's the last weekend of their holidays before they go back to the normal grind. So a lot of people that I was planning to meet up with just weren't available anymore. So I was sort of just going in there a little bit more on the wing to try and see if I could just meet up with people in certain places. And the Rainbow seemed like a logical choice to go to. So I went there, and it was a really hot day. I actually I looked it up on my Google Maps to try and work out how far it was and see how I could get there. And, you could catch a bus there and that was fine. But it said 4 miles or something like that. And just stupid me, I know that miles are not kilometres, but I just didn't bother to do the calculation in my head. So I thought, 4 miles, that can't be far. I'll just walk it. So went for a walk with my backpack and decided I'd walk up Sunset Boulevard instead of Hollywood Boulevard. And it was definitely an experience. Not only did I get ridiculously sunburnt because it was ridiculously hot, but I also just came across every character under the sun that was sprawled across footpaths and in gardens and whatnot. It was definitely an eye-opener, and not the glitz and glamour that's portrayed in film or on TV. This was another side of Hollywood that a lot of people internationally wouldn't know about. I even saw one guy who just definitely gave zero fucks and was lying on a corner, and he was wearing trackies and he had his hand down his pants, give himself a bit of pleasure time. I guess it was nice to see an element of personal freedom. I'm sure he just didn't care and was happy enough to go about his business in broad daylight. Certainly an eye-opener for me, and not something that I really wanted to stop by and say hello, so I just kept moving. Look, I mean, every city's like that. Every city's got their areas, and there's people that are worse off than others, and it's no different in LA than it is to anywhere else, and certainly got to see a bit of that. So it was an experience. I'm still glad I did it. But so by the time I got to the Rainbow, I was extremely dehydrated and sweaty and sunburnt. But yeah, I was ready to have a good time. Got a few beers and just started chatting to people. But the good thing about it, and going back to what I said a little while ago, is that I had been chatting to people online, and a friend of mine from Australia, actually the same person who lured me into this bondage club, Barry, had put a bit of a shout out to a lot of his friends in LA, and just to see if anyone wanted to meet up. And so a few people were actually planning on going to the Rainbow, and so I had a few opportunities there just to start chatting to people. So I met up with some nice people while I was there, and some people that I've met online through these Facebook groups as well. So it ended up working out really well. I got to interact with a lot of people, hand out a couple of flyers, but more or less just get some just some good bonds and build some relationships with people. And I got to see some fantastic bands. One thing I came to realize is that the LA scene is like any scene. It's from a local level, everybody knows each other. And I compare it to Sydney, where I go to a Sydney metal show and half the crowd are musicians, and it's just the way that it is. We go out and we support each other. And in LA, it's the same deal. There's all these musicians out there in full force, but then all the local musicians who live in the area came out as well. But the difference being is that these circles of people are people that have had a degree of success, whether it be currently now or whether it be 20, 30 years ago. So it was just really cool to see just all these great people walking around, and people that, even if they weren't in bands, but people that worked in band management or worked in studios, and everyone had a story. Everyone knew somebody, and it was just a really cool energy about the place, and definitely a unique part of the world to be in, especially if you're a rock or metal fan. And I was chatting to one particular person, and the Rainbow is notorious for famous people who just go there. It's their local bar, and Lemmy from Motorhead being one of them, and he was off on tour and he hasn't been too well either, so I wasn't expecting to bump into him. But someone said, Ron Jeremy stays there, goes to this bar all the time, and actually I think I saw him earlier on. They're telling me, so I thought, okay, interesting. And this person said, I hear Ron's a big fan of Australians. So I thought, here's my opportunity to be over the top, stereotypical, to try and say hi and shake his hand. Not that I'd go out of my way to shake Ron Jeremy's hand, but I had a few beers and I thought it'd be a good laugh. So anyway, I walk in and sure enough, here he is, and he's just standing there with a couple of people. So I took my opportunity, went up to him and just said, hi Ron, my name's Andy. I'm from Australia. Just wanted to say hello and shake your hand. And he just very polite, very nice guy, and just said, thanks, that's great, blah, blah. And then his this other guy next to him, who must have been like, I don't know, his agent or something like that, just sort of stuck his head in and started giving me this sales pitch about how, have you tried Ron Jeremy's, I don't know what it was, vodka or wine or some sort of possibly it was a Spirit, that's available at Dan Murphy's liquor stores in Australia. And I just sort of went, oh no. And there was a bit of look of disappointment, but I said, oh, don't worry, I'll try it. And we sort of almost got into the groove of actually having a chat, but then him being Ron Jeremy and being in a place packed with people, these other people came over and started, wanting to get selfies with him and whatever. So I sort of said to him really quickly, I said, oh, I'd love to get a photo with you. And then he got interrupted. So I sort of just stood back a little bit and I thought, I can't let this opportunity go amiss. So I just hung there like a bad smell. I normally don't do this. I hate being that person, but I'd had a few beers. I was drunk. I was in LA. It's my second night in LA, and I thought, I'm not gonna see this guy again. I'm just gonna give it a shot. So once he'd taken those photos, he started to move away, and I just quickly grabbed him and said, Ron, I'd love to just, if you don't mind, just a really quick photo, and then I'll leave you be. And he just turned around and said, I'll be here all night. Don't worry about it. It's all good. And in the back of my head, I went, no, I've got to do it now, because if he walks off, I am not going to see this. I'm not going to bump into him again. He's going to be swamped all night. I'm just going to miss my opportunity. And I said, sorry, Ron, just really quickly. I know I'm being a pest, but just if I can get a real quick photo, it'd be great. So he stops, and I just get the phone out and fumble and flip it the other way and get the horrible cheesy selfie and take the photo, and then off he goes. But just before I left, I gave him a flyer and said, oh, look, hey, you go, playing this metal band from Australia, and here's a business card for my podcast or whatever. And he sort of looked at me and went, yeah, cool, man, and walked off with it in his hand. And I know that he probably just crumpled that up or chucked it on a table or gave it to somebody else, but it was a kind of cool moment that I gave Ron Jeremy my business card and got a photo with him. But that was the sort of place it was. It was just a very unique place with a lot of people that either know people or they were or are somebody that's well known. And it was just a very unique energy to the place. And a lot of people that were just trying to be somebody as well. I noticed that just in Hollywood in general, with a lot of places that I sort of walked by or went into places, a lot of people, you used to see it in movies or, the old 80s video clips like Poison's Fallen Angel, where the girls travel to LA to try and make it big, and you get that vibe in a lot of places where there's just almost this element of desperation where people have migrated to California to make it big and whether it be famous or whatever it might be. So there's definitely that feeling there as well. And it's a little bit intoxicating in a way. I can understand why people get swept up in it all. And while, Hollywood's not the most prettiest of places, it's definitely a vibrant area with a lot of energy. And I think if you're in the right spots, then, it could be very beneficial to your career. If I know people who are actors that have moved there, musicians and whatnot. So it's, I can now understand a little bit more, and not just from a stereotypical movie point of view. I understand why people choose to go there. Probably not my thing. I don't think I'd ever want to live there, but it was a cool experience all the same. But anyway, moving forward from LA, I jetted off across the country to New York, and I chose to fly United Airlines for the entire trip, which, looking back, I regret for one main reason. I just didn't think about my points and whatnot. I know that Delta's linked in with Virgin, and I try and fly Virgin as much as I can in Australia, and I've got heaps of points through them, and I just wasn't thinking, and I just looked for the cheapest flights possible instead of thinking about sort of the benefits of getting points and whatnot long term, because I do a fair bit of traveling every year. Sometimes it's better to pay a little bit more and get the benefits out of it than just going for the cheapest option. But I made that decision and probably saved a few bucks. But I flew United across from LA to New York, and this is my first experience of domestic air travel in the US. And I've got to say, from a security point of view, it's just out of control. There's just constant PA announcements about, taking stuff out of your bags and not leaving bags unattended and the typical things. And it's the same in Australian airports, but this is just constant over and over again. It's just constantly barking out these messages. And then there's all the security sort of checkpoints, these aisles that you go through. But of course, they've got, say, 6, and they've closed off 4 of them. So they've got 2, and they've got an aisle a mile long. So I'm standing in this line for an hour just to get through security. And it was super strict. The typical laptops out of your bags, the liquids thing that we experience in international travel, not having anything more than 20 mils, or I can't remember what the amount is, but that's all domestic. I was experiencing that going through United domestic flights in the US. So the liquids was was something I had to keep in mind. I had to take belts off, I had to take shoes off, absolutely everything out of the pockets, regardless of whether it was metallic or not. So pretty much I had empty pockets and I just held my passport in my hand as I went through. There was passport checks, ticket checks to go through security. So in Australia, you're allowed to walk through security even if you're not boarding a plane, for domestic flights that is. So that way you can walk straight to your gate and see your family members or your friends off. In the US, from what I can see, you've got to have a ticket if you're going through that security into the gate area. So different and a lot more sort of intensive than what it is in Australia. The other thing that I noticed that was unique with the airports there was that every 5 or 10 minutes there was an announcement about American soldiers or servicemen, thanking them for their service and advising them of special lounges and privileges that they have, and something like, on behalf of LA Airport or New York Airport or Atlanta or whatever, we salute you. And a lot of respect there and whatnot. But it was just a very unusual thing. I've never heard that before. But Americans are known for being patriotic, and it certainly was a demonstration of that. But in some ways kind of cool. In other ways, it was just unusual. It was just very different to what I'd experienced before. And the other thing, which was actually in Atlanta, but while I'm on the topic of airports, is that they had announcements over the PA about church sort of Christian services that were happening in the airport chapel. So they would say, like, at 1 o'clock there's a mass at the chapel at gate such and such, or near gate such and such, at 1 o'clock, if anybody's interested. And I've just never, I guess Atlanta, Georgia's in the south, and it's probably a bit more of a religious demographic down that way, but it was just something very unusual. I've never heard any religious announcements at any airports, from what I can remember anyway. So that was an interesting one. But anyway, I boarded this plane from LA to New York, and two things I noticed with this flight, and I don't have any other airlines to compare it with, or different flights to really compare it with too much. But the two things that I noticed with this particular flight was, one, there was no row 13. Which was amusing. I understood why they didn't have row 13, but it was amusing all the same that superstition is such a strong thing with so many people that they've actually removed that row from the plane. They actually do not indicate a row 13. So I was in row 15 or something like that. So I'm walking up, counting the aisles as I'm going, and I get to 12, and then suddenly 14. I go, oh shit, like, how did I skip forward? And then I realised that there was no 13 at all. So I found that amusing, and I'm sure there's people out there who take superstition very, very seriously, which is, I think, is a bit of a joke, but to each their own. But I just thought, just in the modern age, that we've still got these, these old mental approaches to things, these ways of life that are just so out of date. But either way, that's what it was on this plane. And I didn't check the other planes that I was flying back on, so I didn't notice what the other ones were, but I definitely noticed that on this particular flight. The other thing was, there were quite a few Orthodox Jews on the plane. And I end up reading an article. I read an article several months prior, but just didn't think about it. But what I've discovered was, and I read a bit more up about it afterwards, is that for a lot of Orthodox Jews, they cannot sit next to a woman. And so what happens is, when they get assigned their seat, because they've got no idea, if they walk up to their aisle on their seat and they realise that there's a woman that's sitting in the seat next to them, they either just stand there, or they walk all the way back up to the front and try their best to push through everybody, and they just stand there and wait. And it holds the plane up. And the stewardess appears, at least in this scenario, knew why he was standing there. And basically what they have to do is they have to try and find somebody else in the plane that's willing to give up their seat, move to the other seat where the woman's sitting, so that Orthodox Jew can sit next to another male. Now, I read somewhere in an article that they asked someone from the Orthodox community why that's the case, and they said something like, it's I could be getting this completely wrong, so I do apologise, and I'm definitely not trying to be disrespectful if I'm way off the mark, but it was something along the lines of, as a married man and an Orthodox Jew, it's a sign of respect to not sit next to a woman. It's sort of like you stay away from temptation, being faithful to your faith and to your wife as well, by not associating with other women, which, I guess depending on how you look at it, I guess that it could be a bit of a sort of a romantic viewpoint on that, from from the faithful approach, but to me it sounds a little bit over the top and in a way a little bit disrespectful for the poor woman that has to be put in that situation where someone's refusing to sit next to her because of her gender, and for whatever reason insinuating that either the woman can't control themselves and would lure a male into temptation, or a male is that weak that by sitting next to a woman, they would easily fall into temptation and commit adultery. So, once again, another old school thought and an old way of thinking, and a little bit out there, and definitely caused inconvenience and hassle on this plane. It held up the plane from departure, and trying to work with people to try and shuffle people around. And there was two guys on my flight that were in this scenario, and when I was reading up a bit more about it, I realised that this is something that's quite common, especially flights sort of coming in and out of New York, because there's a massive Jewish community on that side of the country, and a lot of complaints around it. And look, I mean, I think you can have whatever belief you want as long as it's not hurting people and putting people out. And I think you need to be able to give people a sign of respect, and you don't want to put people out and inconvenience people as well. And to put a whole plane of people out by delaying a flight because of an old way of thinking is probably a little bit much. But we're all unique, and there's probably there's much worse out there that we probably need to be focusing our attention on. But it was definitely a unique thing that I am not used to whatsoever and had never experienced before. But I'm kind of glad I did. I get to talk about it now. So that were the two main things I noticed on that flight. Actually, there's one other thing as well that we had is we had Wi-Fi on the planes, so it was really cool. So you signed up with your credit card online through your phone, and you got free Wi-Fi. And for this particular flight, the Wi-Fi, it was a 5-hour flight, and the Wi-Fi dropped out about halfway through. And there's a guy sitting next to me who just lost his shit because the Wi-Fi was off and he couldn't access it, so he kept annoying the air hostess all the time and was asking for how he could get a refund and just bitching and moaning about it. And I just thought it's just so funny in this day and age that something amazing like Wi-Fi on a plane, most people, and this is only just a new thing, even in Australia you don't have Wi-Fi on planes yet. So such a novelty and a convenience to people that as soon as it's taken away from somebody, they just crack the shits. And there's a skit by Louis C.K. who talks about this, and the guy didn't even know that there was Wi-Fi 5 minutes ago, but suddenly the Wi-Fi drops out, and he says how horrible this is and what a joke it is. And Louis C.K. basically says you didn't even know it existed 5 minutes ago, yet you're feeling entitled now that you should complain about it. That's people for you. But anyway, got to New York. I flew into Newark Airport in New Jersey, and I just stayed at like a hotel. There's a hotel at the airport there, and it was just, I got in at like 1:30 in the morning, so I just figured it was better to do that than try and find a way into the city that night, early hours of the morning, especially when I'd never been to New York before. So I did that. Next morning, had my first Uber experience, which was amazing. Everyone kept telling me to use Uber, so that night when I got into New Jersey, I downloaded the app and signed up and try to get my head around it. And for anyone who hasn't used Uber before, I know there's people that are sort of on different pages with it. Some love it, some don't. I had awesome experiences with it in the US, and just really cool to be able to GPS your location right in there where you need to go. It gives you an estimate of how much it's going to cost you. It shows you how many cars are circling that or in that vicinity, in that area. Once you lock it in and confirm it, it identifies the car that picks it up. It shows you the guy or girl's face and name with the registration plate and the type of car it is, so you know what to look out for. And it shows you on the map as it's incoming in. It tells you how far off that car is: 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, and then it rocks up. So you just get in there. It's all linked to your credit card, so you don't have to actually hand over any cash. Although in the US, I still had to do the tipping thing, but it was awesome. It was heaps cheaper than a taxi. So I had this. I got this Uber taxi, and then went into lower Manhattan. It was East Village, and there was another air bed and breakfast that I booked. Amazing place, another studio apartment, ground floor, right in the middle of East Village. great energy, great vibe, beautiful area, lots of cafes and bars and restaurants and just so much energy. And we had a lot of energy like Hollywood did, but just a completely different vibe. Different vibe altogether, and you could tell why people want to move to New York. Same sort of thing. It's just this lifestyle there and extremely expensive, but you understand why people make that sacrifice and want to pay more to live in such a place. It's just an amazing energy to the place, and it just sucked that I was only there for basically I was there overnight and I had to fly out the following morning. But I met up with a couple of friends of mine that I'd met online over like years gone by, Jason and Eric, who took me out to Brooklyn to a metal bar called Duff's, I think off the top of my head, which was really cool. We had some pizza in there and drank beer and just talked about metal bands and gigs and all that, and left a few flyers and CDs in the bar, and then if anyone lives in the Brooklyn area and is listening to this, run down to Duff's and see if there's a sample of CD still sitting there on the shelf. Hopefully they're all gone by now, but hey, you never know. And then we went out to a couple of bars in East Village. One was like this Irish pub that we went into, which was very sort of old school colonial sort of feel to it. It was like an English sort of Irish sort of setup, but the guys behind the bar were filling up these sort of mini steins, and they fill them up halfway, and the options that you've got is light or dark. That's it. So you go in there and the guy just says to you, light or dark. So it's like, yeah, whatever, we'll have dark. And while we're standing there waiting for our drinks, this group of like 4 or 5 girls walk in, and they're drunk and all dressed, skimpy outfits and whatever, and they're like, oh, do you have cocktails? And the guy just goes, yeah, we do, light or dark. And they go, do you have like, I don't know, Cosmopolitan or whatever? And he's like, light or dark? And they're like, I don't know. And then eventually they just walked out. Like they just realized that they weren't getting anywhere. And the guy was having a good laugh, stirring them up. But basically these guys were just, that's it. It was light or dark beer, and that's it. And the beer was pretty cool. I didn't even know what it was. It was like, I think it was just their own brewed stuff, but it was just a cool vibe, very different. They definitely had a theme in there. It was very colonial, stripped back, very basic sort of setup in there, but it just had a great vibe. A lot of people drinking, and this was like a Tuesday night in New York. It was just fantastic. And then we went to another bar after that, and had a few drinks before saying our goodbyes. Earlier in the day, actually, Eric actually took me over the Brooklyn Bridge, which was really cool. Took me to the World Trade Center Memorial Park. It was, I'm glad I went, but it was just one of those, I think it was just circumstance. It was a hot day. We were sort of running on a tight schedule, and Eric was there, and Eric he's a native, and I didn't really have the opportunity to really sort of sit there and just soak it up and sort of really appreciate what had happened there. You know what happened. You know that it was just this devastating event, but it was very hard to just sit back and just take it in. I think it was just due to we were rushing, we were moving quickly, we were all hot, and I needed to go to the toilet. I was dehydrated, and it just wasn't the right opportunity just to sit there and just sort of go, wow, this is, feel the energy of the place, So I'm still glad I went, and I'm glad that Eric was able to take me there, and I got to experience the subway system as well, which was cool. But I think I'll definitely have to go there again with a little bit more time to spare, and just sort of sit there and just take it in and just have a think about it all, and just probably appreciate what a lot of people went through, and a lot of locals that are still around and what they had to experience. And, amazing that, 10 or 11 years of, actually, no, sorry, longer than that, 14 or 15 years have passed to see what they've been able to turn it into now. It is quite inspiring, and it's amazing to show what sort of direction that they took. They built another tower there. They have this massive memorial park there. It's very clean. It's very, there's a lot of tributes to all the people that tragically died on that day, and it definitely can be an overwhelming place, but I think you need to go there with a bit of free time just to sit there and relax and just soak it in. But anyway, that was New York. I basically only had sort of a full day there, and then the next day I had to fly into Atlanta. So definitely a place that I'd love to go to again, and I'll do that down the track when I find some money. So I got to Atlanta, flew into Atlanta on the Wednesday morning, and got an Uber to my hotel. Actually, I tried to attempt to get a train from the airport to my hotel, because my hotel was on Peachtree, but I didn't realise that there's a million streets in Atlanta that are Peachtree. There's North Peachtree, West Peachtree. There's all these different Peachtree Terrace Street or whatever it might be. And I just saw Peachtree Station, so I went, oh, well, that's it, I've got to go there. Got off and realised I was absolutely nowhere near my hotel, so I'd end up getting an Uber to the hotel, which was fine. Stayed at this motel, which was like this crummy old motel, which was pretty close to the venue, probably like a mile and a half for a couple of kilometres walk. Very crummy and scummy sort of place, but you know what? It served its purpose. It was the cheapest in the area, and it was a place that I could sleep, shower, lock up my stuff, and it served its purpose. It was perfect for what I needed it for. Hopefully I won't need to ever stay in that place ever again, but it was definitely good for what it is, and I understand why people stay there as well, especially if you're staying with a few other people. It just works. It works for what you are, and you don't spend a lot of time in your hotel, so really, to be honest, you don't need anything flash and overly comfortable either. It's just there to pass out at the end of the day or early hours of the morning and freshen up and go back out and experience the city or the festival or whatever it might be. So once I checked in, all that was fine. I went to the first night of the ProgPower Festival, which is the Wednesday midweek show, and this was organised by Milton, who's one of the co-organisers of the festival. And this is headlined by Evergrey, and also my friends Voyager were also on the bill, along with some other awesome bands. And it was great. Milton got me in on the door. It was fantastic, which I was really appreciative of. I was more or less prepared to pay to get in, but the organisers were extremely generous while I was there, which definitely made things easier, and it made the experience even better, because it was a nice gesture from them, and they didn't need to do that. But it was great. Got to immediately, as soon as I walked in, I met up with, saw some of the Voyager crew. We're having a chat to them. I saw a couple of friends from Australia that were there. Milton spotted me, had a quick chat to him, and then just went around, and it was amazing. Like, I'd start chatting to one person, and then suddenly that person would introduce me to 5 or 6 other people, and then it just sort of like exponentially just got bigger and bigger, and before I knew it, I was just standing around, drinking, having a great time, chatting to everyone. I saw Glenn and his wife Jennifer as well there, and had a quick chat and said hello, and then for the rest of the night just enjoyed the bands and got to see Voyager play for the first time in front of an overseas crowd, and I was just blown away by how many fans there were there and how much they were getting into it, and it was a pretty proud moment. It was just cool from an Australian perspective, and look, for those that don't know, our first show was Lord almost 10 years ago in Sydney. Voyager came out from Perth and played with us, and Voyager was still relatively unknown in Sydney, and it was just that was a great show. It was one of the best shows we've ever played as far as lineups go as well, and it was just great to see. They've come over and they've played some pretty dismal shows over the years in Sydney, because Sydney's crowds can be pretty lackluster at the best of times, but I've seen them over the recent years just get so much better, and just to see them at this level playing in front of such an enthusiastic crowd who knew their music and were loving it, and heaps of people wearing Voyager t-shirts, was just such a cool moment, just to see. You can see that full spectrum of where they've been, how much work they put into it, especially being in Perth. For those people who don't know, Perth is such an isolated city. It's so expensive to travel anywhere and to tour, and for a band that's trying to get their name out there, it's extremely difficult. It's just so costly, and a lot of bands just don't get out of Perth and just forever are local in Perth, and that's it. And like, probably to my surprise, there has actually been quite a number of successful bands, rock and metal bands, that have come out of the Perth scene. There's a great music scene there, but just to have that context and know that they've worked their asses off for quite a few years, and to see them play was great. And got to see Evergrey as well. That's the second time I've seen Evergrey play. I saw them play 2008 in Sydney, and it was cool to see them play, and I love their latest album as well, which was really cool. So it was great to be there and have some beers and watch them play. And then afterwards, after the show, I met all these people and got these great bonds with these people and other people that I've met online over the months prior leading up to the festival. We after the show, and it just became a nightly tradition that we would go back to the hotel. I can't remember the name of the hotel, the Ardmore, I think. And they've got a courtyard, and it's just this tradition every year, and every night after each night of the festival, everyone just migrates there and drinks out in the courtyard and mingles and has a great time, and it was fantastic. So here I was, and I was dead tired from the previous night in New York and only having a couple of hours sleep before having to go to the airport, and I was just running on fumes by that point, but got to meet a lot of cool people, drinking and just talking shit and having a great time. And that ended up being, I think, 4 or 5 in the morning. I stumbled back to my motel and passed out there and didn't wake up until about 2:30 the following afternoon. Completely missed Evergrey's acoustic set that they had in the afternoon the next day, but it was a much needed rest, and I was able to sort of get up and function after that. But the following day was another big one. Nathan, who's one of the other co-organisers, that was his Thursday show, and Saxon and Armored Saint were the main ones there, as well as Dragonland as well. And I should have it in front of me, but I can't remember, and someone's going to have a go at me now for not remembering, but there was another band. Maybe Hibira, I could be wrong. But this was the first show. The Wednesday night was up in a venue called Loft, which as of next year, the shows won't be in that area. But the Thursday night was the first of the remaining 3 nights that were in Centre Stage, which is the main auditorium where all the bands were playing. Fantastic setup. No matter where you stood or sat in that venue, you had the perfect view. Sound was fantastic. Great vibe. And in the foyer there was food to eat, merchandise to buy, multiple bars, and just a lot of people mingling and chatting. And this was my world for the next 3 days. I spent more time in those foyers, in that foyer, than I did watching bands. And there was a few times there where I went in to watch a band and just realized that, you know what, as much as I'm loving this, I need to go back out and just keep chatting to people. And I'm here to to forge those relationships, and so I watched songs from a lot of great bands that played over the coming days, but a lot of the time I was out there chatting to people and just connecting and building some good relationships for the long term. But going back to what I said earlier on, I had a backpack packed full of flyers and promo CDs, and I went out of my way just to have beers with people and just chat, and just luckily for me, I had a conversational piece straight off the bat with my accent, so I definitely milked that, and people were curious to find out where I was to start off with. And then when I said I was from Australia and that I came over for the festival, they were intrigued to try and work out why that was the case, and then sort of the conversation led from there, and I was able to talk about the band without putting a hard sell on there, and find out where they were from, what part of the country, and for a lot of people, they'd flown in from every corner of the country. It was amazing where people travel from, and a lot of people that travel internationally as well. A lot of people from Central America, South America, people from Europe that came over. There's a few Australians that were over as well. UK, just a really cool setup that they've got that encourages so many passionate music fans to come to this particular festival. So the next 3 days, or even the first night, but especially the next 3 days, was just a lot of chatting, a lot of talking shit and having a laugh and having a good time, and giving flyers out where appropriate and giving a CD out where appropriate. And actually, funnily enough, before I knew it, all my CDs had gone within the first day or day and a half. So I ended up putting up a post on a couple of the groups on Facebook, just to say, I've run out of CDs, but if anyone wants one, I'll post one when I get back. And so it worked out quite well, because there was a lot of people who were interested, and they were getting a free CD. So I got some addresses off people and shot out some CDs, which had a number of benefits, which I'll touch on shortly. So I'm not going to go blow by blow over the coming days, but it was just a case that I got to meet a lot of people. I got to have great conversations and just build these relationships with people. And, and every night after each of the shows, going back to this courtyard at this hotel and just drinking. And it was great. There was no bar there, just people brought along alcohol and just were offering cans of beer or bottles of beer or whatever, and it was great just to be able to stand around and chat. And I met so many great people. I met a lot of sponsors, which was really intriguing. That I'm still learning the whole concept behind it, but a lot of people that just more or less invest in the festival and believe in it, and they believe in the bands and just seem to be so passionate about it and get something out of it. It's not just a case of coming to Atlanta and partying and seeing great music. There's definitely this bond that's been forged together that's incredible, and I think for a lot of people, speaking to them, this is their time each year. This is like their vacation that a lot of people refer to, and it's their escape from the daily grind. It's their way to connect with like-minded people. There's a sense of purpose there, and it's just something that just empowers them, engages them. So it's just a fantastic thing to see, and I just saw that over the coming days, and just to walk away at the end of the festival with so many connections, and exchanging business cards and whatever, and finding people on Facebook and vice versa, and it was just an incredible experience. And I won't spend too much more time on that, but I've just got to say, like, with the festival, I was just blown away with how it's put together. It's just such a family-orientated atmosphere for such a specific niche demographic of metal fans who are very, very knowledgeable, very passionate about music and want to be a part of it. And as I said before, right at the start of this episode, it was definitely the type of demographic that I needed to be part of, that we need to be a part of as a band and associate with. So I was very, it was just good to be able to see that and get the reality of it all. From there, look, at the end of that festival, and I'll touch on this a bit more now, leading up to the festival, we had been given sort of an informal invitation to play in 2016, which was definitely a great win for us, even though it wasn't 100% guaranteed. And there was a few reasons for that. There was format changes that were happening. There's a lot of things that were up in the air. There was a headliner that they were having, they couldn't announce straight away. So they were only going to announce 2 of the nights instead of all 4. So there's a few different factors there, which meant that they couldn't give 100% commitment. So it was more of a case that we would see each other in Atlanta and have a chat and see if we could iron out some details and whatnot. So at the end of the festival, it was just one of those occasions where it was just so manic and busy that I just didn't, apart from the first night, I didn't really get a chance to have a chat to any of the guys, any of the organisers of the festival, especially Milton, who I've been chatting to quite a bit. So I walked away from that, with this informal invitation, but it was a case that we just had to wait and see. We had to wait and see what happened. And I was pretty confident, but you didn't want to get cocky and jump the gun, of course. So coming back home, and I mean, for me, I sort of always look from a worst case scenario, and I realized that the trip was successful. I realized that I built so many connections and relationships, and handed out a lot of CDs and made a lot of contacts. I was going to mail out a lot more when I got home. I handed out a lot of flyers and just built such great bonds with people that I knew that I already had plans, and as I said at the start, that we would come over to the US anyway, and I had the vision that we would do a tiny club tour, what we could afford, and with time pending as well, and then we would just come to ProgPower anyway. The 4 of us in the band, we would come over and we would just make ProgPower our end of tour party and just go there, buy tickets and just have a drink and enjoy it and just interact with people and just continue to network. And I just thought it'd be a great opportunity for us as a band to go there, even if we weren't playing. So I already had sort of this vision of what I was going to do in 2016, and I was quite happy with the trip. I definitely thought it was a success. I built a lot of connections, not just from a fan perspective, but people in the industry. A lot of people that I could come back to later on down the track when the time was right to chat or pick their brain or see if there's something that I could potentially get from them and I could do something for them as well, going back to the mentality that I said earlier. But yeah, once I got back, Milton got in touch and just said, well, what do you guys think? Are you keen on being a part of next year? And I sort of went, yeah. Yes, I think so. Deep breathing. So as of now, and there was a reason for holding off, is because we hadn't been announced, and now as of 2 days ago, we've been announced to play the Wednesday show of the festival. We'll be the first band off the rank, and there's a few more bands that need to be announced for both nights, but we're absolutely pumped. I think it's a great achievement for us to be able to play it. I know for some of my peers I know will be like, I've done better, but I don't care. This is perfect for us. It's what we've wanted. Our goal was to play the US, and we can't think of a better opportunity to debut Lord in the US and link the old Dungeon crowd to what we're doing now as well. And it's just, we couldn't think of a better opportunity. So it's really perfect for us. And we'll see what other opportunities there are around that festival to see if we can lock in a couple of other shows. It just comes down to money. Apparently, the exchange rate's absolutely woeful at the moment, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. There's a few people that are forecasting darker times ahead. So we're definitely trying to plan ahead with finances and whatnot, but it'll definitely come down to time and money as far as what we can do. But I think at the very least, to be able to have a foot in the door and and play in Atlanta at ProgPower as a debut in the States is just an absolutely amazing achievement for us. And I definitely can talk on behalf of the other guys. We're just extremely proud and excited to do it. And, what we're going to do now is just make sure that the guys, Milton, Glenn, Nathan, just all know that they've made a great choice by picking us. And we've got a lot of cool ideas, a lot of ways of interacting with people between now and next year, doing lots of campaigns and just great fun little things along the way to help promote the festival and continue to push our name in the US. So we definitely won't be quiet with regards to it, and we'll look to continue to build more bonds with more fans and people over there. So we'll see what the coming months provide. But it's definitely good looking back now, leading up to, over the last several years of trying to get onto this festival, but just getting to this point now of achievement is just fantastic, and we've definitely got some big plans ahead, and we'll continue to ride that momentum as much as we can with everything else we do, hopefully with a new album in tow as well. And that's about it, really. The only other thing I was going to make a mention of is I actually brought my this Zoom H5 over with me with the intention of doing quite a few podcast interviews. I was going to do one with Milton, some guys that I know in LA, and some people in New York as well, and even some of the Voyager crew. And I had quite a long list of people, but same with the blog post. Time and opportunity just didn't quite match up. A lot of distractions, a lot of it being alcohol, but we were all busy, and sometimes it's just good to be able to pull someone aside and have a chat without watching the clock, and we can definitely do that down the track. So a lot of those people that I missed out on, I'll either do next year, or I'll do it over Skype or over the phone or in my travels between now and then. So that's about it. I've been crapping on for too long. Hopefully that had some sort of flow to it. I'm sure there's heaps of little things that I missed along the way, but I just thought I'd touch base with my ProgPower experience, and especially with the cool announcement that's happened now. I thought it might be a good idea to do a little episode on that anyway. So that's it. Going back to the start, this episode was not brought to you by my Dino Riders VHS copy, Volume 3, Torosaurus. I've got a Facebook photo gallery that I'll be putting all my fake sponsors in there. So be sure to go on there and if you know the Dino Riders thing, or have some old toys floating about, take some photos, and we'll have a laugh over all that. And actually, while I'm on the topic of Facebook, for those that are listening, you would have seen that anyone that uses Facebook these days has a lot of trouble these days trying to get your posts seen by a lot of people. And I've seen this with my new page that I've set up. I struggle to get any sort of reach on my posts. So I post something and I might get 50 people that it's reached on my little indicator underneath the post, which is extremely frustrating given at the moment there's probably about 700 odd people that have liked the page. So it does make it difficult when I'm posting about a new episode, or I've got a photo gallery where I've put up all the books that I've been reading. But look, if you're listening to this and you just want to do me a massive favor, apart from going on iTunes and giving me a rating and a review, which would be amazing, please get onto the Facebook page and just go crazy for like a couple of minutes and like as many posts and pictures and like comment on stuff, and just help me get the page a bit more interactive and a bit more activity happening on there, because Facebook's got these weird algorithms in place, and if they can see that there's interaction on the page, then the future posts tend to get a lot more coverage and reach a lot more people, which is a little bit backwards, because to me, how the hell can I reach people and get that activity if Facebook's not allowing me to connect with people? But that's where I'm going to need your help. So if you're listening to this and you want to just do something really small, just spend a couple of minutes going through and just liking as much stuff as you can. If you find something interesting, like an article that I've posted or an episode that you thought was interesting, please just press the share button or post the link separately in your news feed and link back to my page. Go through and just like posts, comments, all that jazz. You know how it all works, because it will have a major effect and will help me further down the track to get more people listening to the podcast as well. I'm going to try a few other things as well. I need to try and get a YouTube channel together. It'll just be audio for the time being, but I'm going to put some other stuff and video content further down the track. But I need to definitely have another platform there just to reach more people and get people more connected to the website and to the podcast itself. I'm going to do some blogging. I just need to work out how I'm going to approach that, what sort of topics. I I don't want anything in particular, but I'm trying to think of a few things that I can write about. I definitely like the idea of improving my writing skills. So lots of things in the pipeline, lots of ideas, definitely things that I want to do to help increase the listenership and activity around this podcast and help me make it bigger and better each time. So any help that you can think of, whether it's just recommending it to some friends, people who already listen to podcasts, pass it through. If there's as I said, particular episode that you're interested in, or you just want to just help me out, just go through and like a bunch of stuff, rate me on iTunes, leave an over-the-top ridiculous review. I'm not sure how the rating systems work on Android, but if there's any other platforms that are linked into my podcast, please just get in there and show your support in any way that you can. And that's it. I've got another couple of episodes that I've already recorded. I've got to do the intros for them soon. Heaps of stuff coming along. I've got another 4 or 5 people in the pipeline that I've got to interview, but some really, really cool stuff coming up. And I really hope that you guys get something out of it. It's cool. I really hope that that people are enjoying it to date, and I really just thank you all for showing their patience and continuing to listen, and hopefully I can keep bringing some cool stuff along in the future. Anyway, that's it. Thanks, guys. Cheers. You're ready.